everyone. We are live, I hope, here on YouTube. I'm Lindsay and we're going to be painting this today. I'm here in studio with my daughter Lila.
Hi.
And she will send your questions over to me. So if you have a question about this project that we're doing or the new watercolor glass class that I just launched, there's a 50% off discount code in the video description if you wanted to take that. You can ask away and she will ask me the questions as we go along. If you have a question, please type the word question in all caps and then type your question normal. If you type the whole thing in caps, YouTube might knock it out, but if you don't type the word question in caps, we might miss it because sometimes the chat gets really busy with everybody talking with each other because it's fun to hang out and chit chat with your friends in the chat, and I totally get that. We are going to start by, this is the finished picture we're going to do, and I noticed that my friend Rosie's in the chat. I want to thank her for this beautiful sketchbook that she sent me with Arches paper. We are going to work on that. I have a pattern that you can download also in the video description, and there's a copy of the reference photo, which is of this sweet little perfume bottle that looks like a railroad lantern. I think it's really cute, and I think this would be nice framed and hung in a home or camp or cabin or something, just because it's kind of old-timey looking. And the colors that we're going to use today are, we got a Pthalo Green, and that would be Pthalo Green blue shade, but either will work really, because you can just alter how much Pthalo Blue you add to it, which is another color we have. We've got Ultramarine Blue, we've got Burnt Umber, or actually no, this is Burnt Sienna, but you can use Burnt Umber. We've got Yellow Ochre, and we've also got Rose Red, and we've got some white gouache. We may or may not use it. We're going to paint around our whites, but if we need to, bring in a little pop of color, we can use that, or we can use a white pen. In the new watercolor glass class I show you 3 different ways to build up glass highlights. One method is using an opaque white, the other 2 are one's using masking fluid, and one is just, painting around and reserving. So lots of different techniques there in that class if you're interested. And I just noticed that I have no clean water. I've got my dirty rinse water. I forgot to pour my clear water.
It's pretty blurry.
It's pretty blurry. Oh, are we buffering? Shoot. How do you guys in the
A few other people said it was too.
Saying it's blurry. Let me look at your computer because I'm looking at the encoding software. Oh my. Well, hopefully that will clear up. Nobody else is using the internet in the house, so gee, I'm hoping that clears up. We'll give it a few seconds. Does it show you the, let me look at.
It says you're only streaming at 240p.
Oh man, I'm getting an okay stream now and not a high stream. Shoot. It was just at a good rate a few minutes ago. Well, maybe we'll just give it a few minutes before we really get into the tutorial. If you're watching the replay, guys, just skip ahead. I just want to give the stream a second to clear up, hopefully. YouTube did change some of the encoding stuff, but I just took their recommended procedure. Well, you know what? The first bits of this tutorial are going to be laying down washes, so I don't think you need the high def for that. So hopefully by the time we're in a few more minutes, it'll
I think it's fine.
It'll clear up. I know. I just feel bad. I hate to waste the time to do it, do a tutorial if people can't see what's going on. But hey, we can hang out anyway, and and we'll go ahead and paint. Do we have any questions yet, Lila? Or everyone just hanging out and getting in there?
Mostly just people saying question, but then commenting that it's blurry.
Oh gosh, I'm sorry, guys. We're in lockdown. I think probably everybody in the town is on the internet, even though we have a high-speed connection, supposedly.
Gail AC says that it's not going to clear up. You'd have to change something in settings.
Well, it was, but the stream settings were higher when I was previewing it. All right, let me stop it. We're going to go dark for a minute, and then I'm going to start my encoder up. So just hang on, guys. Please stay, and well, I should be back on air in a minute. Oh, we're getting a bad stream. What do you, can you see anything on
The
your?
internet's been bad on my phone like the last couple weeks.
Yeah. What do you?
I think it's ever since the new edition because it stretches farther. Maybe.
Oh, we unplugged the. Oh, and we're live, by the way. Hey guys, don't mind us with our little chit chat here. We're just trying to troubleshoot a little bit and figure out why we're getting such a bad stream here. Oh, guys, I'm so sorry. You've waited so long for a live stream, and I can't seem to get a decent stream for you.
I think it's okay.
Let me look at your screen and see how it's looking over there. Oh, you know what? I think it is clearing up a little bit. No, it's not a focusing problem. Somebody suggested they think it's focusing on the plate. I don't think that's it. I think it's just an internet situation. And I honestly don't know what to do. The only thing we have running on the Wi-Fi right now is this stream. Everything else is turned off. So I'm just gonna roll with it, guys. Yeah. What's the question?
Hold on, they went back up. Does humidity affect how watercolor dries? I live in southern NV, very low humidity, and it seems the paper/watercolor dries real quick. Am I missing something?
Yes, the humidity definitely affects it. A lot of times what I'll do if it's really dry is I will paint like if I'm doing a wash, I'll wet it and they'll mix my color up. I'll come back, wet the whole paper again, and then look at it, like tip it to the light and make sure that it's a uniform sheen, and then start painting. And that like really lets the water get into the fibers of the paper and just keeps it wetter a little bit longer. And another technique I do is I wet the back of the paper and I stick it down like on a cutting mat like this, or anything that's kind of porous, and that works well too to keep the paper wetter longer. So there's a couple things you can try. It's also helpful when you're painting outside because things dry faster outside. We're going to start by wetting our middle part here. This would be the green in there. And I'm hoping once we get some color on here, it's gonna be a lot clearer to see. This was one of these things that used to just annoy me about doing live streams. I love the community interaction, but the technical problems, man, it just drives me bonkers. Maybe next time we'll do just a premiere, and that way I can still chit chat with you guys and hang out, but I don't have the stress of the technical issues. But you got me at your disposal for the next hour or so for answering your questions. So I know it's not perfect, guys, but I'm making the best of it. I'm going to mix together some Pthalo Green. Now this is PG7. You'll notice another Pthalo Green, which is PG36. That's Pthalo Green yellow shade. PG7 is Pthalo Green blue shade. And that just, when you see GS or BS or anything after a color, that basically tells you what direction is that color leaning. So if you have a Pthalo Green blue shade, which most of them are, that green is leaning more towards blue. If you have a Pthalo Green red shade, which is less common, it's leaning towards red, but I wouldn't even call it as warm as like an ultramarine blue. It's still pretty light. So I'm going to go ahead and add the color starting at the edges. And now be careful on your edge and try to keep that nice and tidy. And if you need to, go ahead and move your paper. So that tip, that nice pointy tip of your brush is going to go against the edge. And I'm just painting right over that piece of wire here because I can cover that up no problem. That's going to be darker than my vase, or than the glass portion. And all of the supplies I'm using can be found in my signature Turner set through Jerry's Artorama. I apologize, it's sold out currently, but they are working hard to get more in. They just had some in the other day, but they went quick with the launching of this class. I think people had stocked up knowing that I was going to be using that set. But if you've been painting for any amount of time, you will have the necessary materials to do this course. I like to have a little bit of a variation here on this lantern because as you turn it, you'll see that you'll get different like concentrations of color. I'm going to add a little bit more towards the bottom to give it weight, and also because you've got this, the bottom of the lantern is making it kind of dark.
Question.
Yes.
Is your signature Turner set the same colors as the original 24 set you reviewed years ago?
It should be. You really like those colors, so it should. If you have that set, you're going to be all set. There may be a couple colors that are different, but the majority, the tried and true colors would be the same. And if you have a basic set from any brand, guys, you probably have the colors you need. So don't feel like you have to rush out and buy new paint. Now, something else I want to do here is give it a little bit of glow in the center. I'm going to grab some yellow ochre, and I'm going to just kind of swoosh it in there and leave it be.
Some people are saying they're just frozen.
Oh, shoot. Man, oh man, I can't catch a break with this live stream today.
Or buffering and stuff.
Oh. I'm going to try one more thing, guys. I'm going to go dark for a minute. I'm going to try reducing the bit rate and seeing if I can get a smoother thing for you, a smoother stream. So give me a second, guys. Just please hang out. It's going to be dark for a minute, but I'm going to see if I can lower the bit rate and get a smoother stream. You'll have to tell me if things look like it's in screen, because I think I might have ended up changing the aspect ratio of it, okay. But hopefully the important stuff's in screen.
Lots of people are still saying they think it's focused on the palette.
It
looks better, I think.
It does look better?
Yeah, the paint, you can really see.
Well, you know what? I can put a sketchbook under this.
Yeah, it's much better now.
Does this look like it's in focus?
No, it looks good now. Everything's like,
oh, yay!
Good.
Okay, awesome. Okay, that's good. We're gonna move right along. I'm gonna try to trim off all that nonsense. So now the stream is looking good. If you're just joining us, all I've done here is I wet the vase and I put in a wash of a mix of Pthalo Green and Pthalo Blue, and then swooshed in a little yellow ochre in the center. Hopefully that means you don't have to watch the first few minutes of the blurry, awful stream. Okay. Yes.
Question.
Yes.
When you were drawing this, how did you get the roundness right?
I used a one's compass, one of those compass things you use in math class. I used one of those to get a perfect circle, because it would have been a little wonky if I didn't do that. So that's I'm sure you know what I'm talking about, but in case you don't, that's why there's also a little dot right in the center, because I sketched it right in my paper and ended up poking a little hole there, but hey, it works. While we're at it, we're going to do our shadow. So what I want you to do is wet your paper, and the pattern does indicate where the shadow is. You don't have to transfer that on if you don't want to. I usually don't draw the shadows on, but I just wanted, since I was just going to scan my drawing here and put it online, I did sketch it out really lightly. So I'm going to wet that. Then I'm going to mix together my burnt sienna and my ultramarine blue to make a nice soft gray.
Question, where do you buy your paint set?
jerrysartorama.com. If you search Lindsay, you will see my Turner signature set, my Lucas signature set, and my Berlin Oils signature set. This is the Turner set. That's my favorite. I also like the Lucas too, if you prefer a softer, more vintage, kind of like if you think of like, you know, the old master watercolors, the Lucas set gives you more of that look. If you like more modern, brighter colors, the Turner set's a little bit more modern color-wise. I find that a little bit more versatile, but I could see how I like both for different effects. So what I'm going to do is just add the shadow color to the outside of my shadow, and then I'm just going to bring just a little hair into the center and a hair above, and then I'm going to quickly clean my brush, and I am going to whisk the edges to soften them. This is a technique I use a lot with clouds too. When you've got, like, maybe you've just done a sky and you've lifted out your clouds, and then you're like, oh, I want some shadows in my clouds, and you go and put the shadow in, but then because you lifted out your clouds, you dried your paper too much and it's not moving for you. Do this technique, and this will give you that beautiful soft edge on your cloud shadows. It's also good for just cast shadows that you don't want to be really harsh. All right, and then I'm also going to just lift up a little bit of that. Oh, I need a paper towel. Actually, Lila, can you grab me a tissue? I am out of paper towels over here.
This one?
Yeah, just one's fine. Thank you. So I'm going to wipe my brush off lift out a little bit more of that shadow in the center. And then what I'm going to do is just grab a little bit of that green. I'm just going to spread it with a damp brush. The key is just not to put a bunch of water. You don't want to disrupt the amount of, or the equilibrium of water. That gives you a blossom. But I want that nice glow in there.
Someone had the same question, but about your vases and the bottles you painted. How do you get the shapes right?
I do provide patterns because this is not, my new course is not a drawing course, it's a painting course. I actually use, I'll show you real quick because I've got it right handy because I was just using it when I was making those patterns. I paint on a block a lot, which is like a pad of paper where all the edges are combined. And I use a T-square. I put it right on the edge of my block and I will slide it up and down because there's a lip on it, and I can slide that up and down the edge of my block. I could put a triangle onto this if I want to make sure my angles are right, or I just turn it around and put it on this way, and I will draw lines up where I want the middle of my bottles to be. And it's easier when I have that line in the center to make it symmetrical by drawing each side. I'll flip it around too and look at it upside down, and that usually will help me make sure nothing is really out of whack. So you can get those at any like office supply store in the drafting aisle. And probably most art supply stores would have them too, and art supply stores online. Just look under, look in their drafting department because it's usually in the drafting and not in the fine art department. But it's really, really handy. Now, while this is wet, I really can't work on the areas adjacent to it. So what I'm going to do is work on the wires. And I want to mix up a nice dark mix of ultramarine blue and burnt sienna. And I'm going to do that with my same round brush. I've got a number 10 round here.
Here's another like kind of off-topic question, but where is the best place to buy Copics? Are they the best kind of alcohol marker?
Well, Copic is recognized as probably being the premier high-quality alcohol marker. There are some that rival them now. Their big claim to fame is their Japanese brush tip. They do have a beautiful brush tip, but there are other brands out there with a just as good brush tip. Like I would say Blick Studio markers, and they're also refillable. Art and Fly markers, they all have that really great Japanese brush tip. I like the Ohuhu marker brush tips too, but they're not quite as resilient. But definitely for the price, they are a great deal. But for when I'm buying Copics and refills, I pretty much just buy refills. I have all the colors I need. I get them from Scrapbook Pal. And now Copic, though, their refills are half the size and the price is the same, so I'm kind of annoyed and I haven't bought any refills since then. So I'm using the same brush to paint this wire, and if you want to switch to a smaller brush, go right ahead. Lila, tell me if I'm going out of frame because I can't really tell with my...
Yeah.
Oh, good, okay. You can switch to a smaller brush or a liner brush if you want to, but if your brush has a nice point on it, you probably can keep using it. That's why I like these Mimic brushes. They come to a nice fine point. And they're animal free. Actually, that is kind of thick. I could have gone a little bit skinnier with that, but it's all right.
There's another drawing question.
Yeah.
How do we get the aspect ratio right? I drew a duck, but the beak was too small, and I didn't know how to make it bigger.
Well, there's a couple things you can do. One thing is controversial, but you can trace. If you trace, you will have that muscle memory of knowing how to draw it right. Sometimes just tracing it on scrap paper first and then going and drawing it on your drawing paper freehand, just the act of tracing is going to it's going to show you how it really is and not how you think it is. So it will, it'll kind of give you that confidence, and plus it will just give you the knowledge of like, oh, okay, this is this big in relation to that. Sometimes if you trace it and then you draw freehand by looking at your traced drawing, it'll be a lot easier. And another tip I have is to actually just print out your picture, or if you're looking at it on your computer screen, turn it upside down and draw it upside down, because your brain will stop trying to make it look like a duck or whatever you're drawing, and you'll just be drawing shapes. So that can help. There's also grid methods and other gimmicks like that, but I think that's kind of cumbersome, and you always have to have that grid where it's real easy to turn a photo upside down. and draw what you see. And if you're drawing from real life, you can take a piece of like plexiglass and hold it up in front of you and just draw with a dry erase marker to get that kind of that feeling of how big or small something should be. Okay, I think if we work up on this area next, we will have plenty of, we can work on there and just, you know, that'll give that a little more time to dry. Actually, you know what? I'm just going to dry this with my heat tool. Do we have any questions while I'm doing this?
Someone said, anyone got any good ideas for cheap fine liners on Amazon?
The Biennial ones are really good. Sometimes the actual microns will be sold cheaply, but if you can't find the actual microns, the biennial microns are really
said
good.
Those ones were not there.
Oh no. I'm trying to think. I've used the Art and Fly ones. I just find they don't last quite as long as like the official microns or the biennial microns. I'm trying to think. The Arteza Iconic, they make a 10-pack, but they're not waterproof. They do some really interesting stuff when you use watercolor over them. But they're marker proof. If you just need them for like Copic markers, they'll work. But they are not waterproof.
Another question. Have you seen the new, I don't know how to say that, Schminka granulating watercolors? I'm
aware of them. I don't have them though. Gosh, I was just watching a review. I think it was Kimberly Crick Art has a review on those. I don't think her review was very positive on them. I love granulating watercolors, but I'll probably pass just because I trust her reviews pretty well. It seemed like the granulating colors they have aren't anything you can't make with your regular colors. Van Gogh's got some new dusk colors too that are that look pretty fun. All right, I got some burnt sienna. I've got some yellow ochre, and I've also got that mix of burnt sienna and ultramarine. And I'm going to start by throwing a little bit of yellow ochre. I'm not pre-wetting it because it's not a real big space. I did indicate where the highlights are going to be, but I think I'm actually going to paint over them and lift out. And I'm just going to go over where that, yep, that's dry. When you're not sure if something's dry, touch it with the back of your hand, and if it feels cool, then it's not dry yet, and you'll get feathering. I'm going to throw in some yellow ochre. Then I'm going to grab some burnt sienna and just kind of throw it in there next to it, let them mix on the paper. This way I won't over dilute my color. And it's not so big of an area that we'll have any issues of parts drying too soon. I also find that cotton paper, I just wanted to mention this to piggyback on what somebody asked earlier. They were asking about, painting in the desert and it being really dry. I find cotton papers do a better job at retaining the water, so you don't end up with as much of a struggle as you would if you're painting on cellulose paper. I'm going to grab some burnt sienna right from the pan, and I'm going to add it in some of the shadow areas. I'm actually going to look at my drawing a bit too, and as well as my actual reference. I don't have the reference photo I took of my lantern, so I'm looking at my lantern and on my drawing, my other painting. Now I'm going to add some of my mix that's darker, and I'm going to get that right up next to the glass. I'm getting some puddling, which I'll probably have to absorb up so that I don't end up with cauliflowers. How many people do we have with us today, Lila?
262.
Oh, nice. Thanks for sticking in with me, guys. I'm soaking up the puddles here just by blotting my brush and putting it back in. And I'm going to pull out some highlights while I'm at it. I'm just going to take my dry brush and lift out the lighter areas. Now don't fret if your paper dried before you got to do that. You can always just use a damp brush that's a little bit stiffer than your watercolor brush and lift them out.
Question, have you tried the chroma alcohol markers that are on Amazon?
Chroma? No, that doesn't ring a bell. I haven't. There's so many brands on Amazon right now of less expensive markers. Most of them are pretty good too. I mean, most of them don't have brush tips. I don't know about the chromas, but I mean, when I got started in markers, all they had were chisel tips, chisel and bullet tips.
Question: how many projects are included in your glass class? And also, are they the tutorials in your usual format?
They're no, they're not in my usual format. But if you're used to painting along with me on YouTube, you should be able to follow just fine. There are 4 full-length lessons they're broken up into, or I guess I should say 4 full-length projects that are broken up into 10 to 20-minute segments so that you can take breaks when you need to, and kind of work through at your own pace. The lessons they're a little bit more professional because I have a little more time, and I have them edited, and there's no, you won't hear people running around upstairs with a water pump or any of the nonsense that you get on my YouTube videos. But if you're used to my style of teaching, the style of teaching is the same, maybe a little bit slower and more organized because it is kind of a complex subject. So I wanted to make sure I didn't have any any non-essential information. I wanted to make sure it was all kind of building on the skills. So you have the 4 full-length projects. There's 2 perfume bottles. That's one project. It's on the same paper. We've got a beach scene. We've got a rainbow bottles, which has, I think probably about 8 or 9 different colors of bottles. So you can kind of get used to rendering colored glass. We've got clear glass, a clear glass project. And then we also got a basics section where it's not part of the project section. We do 3 other bottles, and I show you a couple different techniques. Or actually, I show you all the basic techniques you're going to need to employ during the class. And then in the lessons, the full-length painting projects, we reinforce all those and put them together to get different effects. So if you go to my blog, there are photos of the finished projects if you want to have a look. And you can also go to the sales page, link down below, and have a look and watch the promo and get a little more information that way. I'm going to take this dark while I'm at it right here, and I'm just going to add that in. If you ever want to spend money on a brush, spend your money on like a nice, pointy, high-quality round. That is going to take you so much farther. That's the brush you really want to make sure that you have a good one of. And anywhere between 8 and a 12. Nice round brush. I'm adding that mix. That is, again, the Ultramarine Blue and Burnt Sienna. And we're just putting it in the edges and the areas where it's a little bit darker. And nice wet into wet. Well, we worked on dry paper, but our paint is so wet that it's kind of like a wet into wet blend. And I like it when you do this because it almost gives you this tarnishy, rusty look. And that's dry, so I can actually very gently put in the wire that we see through the glass. And while I'm at it, I can get the dark at the bottom of the vase, or the glass section, I should say. Perfume bottle, lantern, whatever you want to call it. Grab a little bit of brown, put some brown in there too. I think that will look good because we got that color. And then I'm going to just kind of clean my brush off. I'm going to grab some of the that mix, the Pthalo Blue and Pthalo Green. I'm actually going to mix up a little bit more of that. I just want it wet enough so it will come off my brush, but I don't want it really, really juicy. And I'm going to add a shadow on the edge. I'm actually going to turn my paper because I want it fatter at the bottom and thinner as it goes up the side and get that refraction here on the edge of the glass.
Question.
Yes.
Nice palette. Looks larger than some. Where is it sold?
That one is 7.5 inches wide, and I believe I got it at Cheap Joe's Art Stuff online. If I didn't get it there, I got it at Consumer Crafts, but they've gone out of business, so that wouldn't be much help. But I'm pretty sure I saw it at Cheap Joe's. I just can't remember if I bought it, which place I bought it at. You're going to use your brush straight up and down when you want a fine tip. And kind of a little bit of that around here as well. Am I still in frame, Lila?
Yes.
There's like a 30.
The very bottom of it isn't, but you're not working on that part yet.
Okay. I'm just painting around the highlights. You could use masking fluid. You could use white pen. You know, it really depends on planning. You know, what you're going to use for your masking method or your white highlight method. If you're planning ahead of time, then you know you generally will use masking fluid to build up layers. But if you're just kind of working in your sketchbook, where masking fluid might cause a problem because it's so it can be kind of damaging to the paper, then you know a white pen's probably your best bet. And you can always use multiple techniques if like to get the look you're after. I'm going to take some of this nice dark color. I'm going to add it to my brown, my mix of brown and ultramarine, and get a little bit of a darker dark. And let me see if I can sneak some of this into some of these deeper shadows while I'm at it.
What paper are you using?
This is Hahnemuhle Cezanne. It's very similar to Arches or Fabriano. I'd say, yeah, I'd say it's probably a little bit closer to Fabriano. I think they use that vegetable-based sizing as opposed to an animal sizing that Arches has. So it seems a little bit less crispy than Arches. A little bit less hard-sized.
Another question, did you decide if your next course will be watercolor, food, or still contemplating?
I am still contemplating. I'm actually kind of also itching to do an intro to oils class. But it took me so long to get this one done. I'm gonna, you know, it'll be a little bit. I'll probably be adding to some of my older classes, like adding to my my Christmas card, hand-painted holidays class next will probably be the next thing I add to. So anybody that has that class already will have access to the new content I put in. But I'm thinking I might want to do oils. I feel like oils is such a nice winter medium. Okay, so this is what you shouldn't do. You shouldn't go in here with wet, juicy color on top of a wash that's not completely dry, because now I'm going to get cauliflowers. So what I've got to do here is reliquify all that paint. So don't do that, but now you get to see what happens when you do it. But I will go ahead and lift out some highlights since I have reliquified. Your colors, like your sedimentary colors, the colors that granulate, like ultramarine blue, burnt sienna, yellow ochre, those colors lift up really easily. So I can just go ahead and lift out a highlight while I'm at it and let that dry. I'm going to get this with my heat tool real quick.
Question.
Yes.
Can you link your blog with regards to the promo for the course?
If you just go to my blog post, thefrugalcrafter.wordpress.com, there are discount links in today's blog post. And also in the video description, there is the discount included link, or just if you don't see the discount when you go there, just type in the word shine on the checkout page. There's a little orange add coupon button. You click on that and add your coupon. And heat this from the back, keep it from warping. That feels dry. And if you scroll down in the video description, there should be a link to my blog on under every video, as well as my other social media channels. Now, what we're going to do is grab a scrubber brush. This brush is really neat. They make it under the Mental line and the Zen line. This is by Royal and Langnickel, and it is it's about 1/4 of an inch wide, number 6, filbert, but it's a scrubber. And I like this because a lot of times when you buy a brush called a scrubber, it's made with these really hard bristles, and it like will just chew your paper up. And this is so gentle, it's really nice. But any short, small filbert brush that's made out of the golden hairs will work well for that. Golden synthetic fibers. They usually have longer bristles, so they're not quite as good as this one with the shorter bristles, but they both will work.
Someone asked, do you stretch the paper? I'm a beginner, and stretching paper is the less attractive part of the process.
I usually don't. I haven't really stretched paper for years. If I was going to do a really big painting, I probably would, to keep it from warping, but, or if I was going to use like a 90-pound paper, I would, because it's so light and it would warp. But for general, if I'm using 140-pound paper and I'm using it smaller than like half a sheet, which would be 15 inches by 22 inches, I wouldn't bother. But that's just me. I mean, you totally can. I would usually just tape it down.
Question. For the Christmas class, is there any inexpensive set of paints that can be used?
Oh, absolutely. The 12 Sketcher box of cotton paints will work just fine for that. Use what you have. You're making Christmas cards, I mean, they don't need to last a million years.
Someone asked, how do you do that rusty texture?
We did wet and wet, and that gave us just a beautiful rusty texture on its own. The key is not to overmix. See over here, we got really mottled because I went in and then I started, my brush was too wet, and then I was making cauliflower, so I had to re-wet the whole thing and it overmixed. Here, I didn't overmix and I ended up with this beautiful kind of patina look. So dry paper, really juicy paint, but let them mix on the paper and not on the palette, and that's how you'll get that beautiful rusty color. That's a fun thing to practice. Just grab a piece of paper. Maybe you got a painting you don't like that much. Flip it over, use the back side, make a bunch of shapes, and then just practice doing that rusty technique. I mean, that's how you get good, and you're not wasting paper, so don't feel like you're wasting paper when you do that. Especially if you're using the back side of an old painting you didn't like. But the only wasted products are the ones that sit on your shelf and don't get used. All right, I'm switching to a small brush because I don't want to end up with too much water and paint. And I'm going to mix up a little bit more of my dark, my ultramarine blue, and my burnt sienna. And here's a tip. If you ever have one of these like extra palettes or extra trays, if you take your paint out of your big set, like I'll show you. Like I have my paints in a larger tin. And a lot of times if I'm just painting for fun, I'm not doing a tutorial, and sometimes for tutorials on YouTube, I'll just use this big tin because why not? I got all my colors there. But it can get a little confusing when you have all these colors. So what I do is I'll just pop out the colors I need. You'll notice that I put the colors I use the most in full pans and the colors I use less frequently in half pans. And then I'll just put them in this little extra tray that I have. And it just makes it less confusing when I'm teaching, but it will be less confusing for you if you're learning, because then you won't have to think, oh, is that purple? Is that blue? Because some of these colors are so dark. When you look at like this dioxazine violet, almost looks black, right? It looks like Payne's gray or black. It can be very difficult to tell what you have, even when you do a swatch to match up with it. That just kind of takes out a variable of picking out the wrong color when you're not used to it. So that would be another tip. And then mixing on a plate, a ceramic plate or a ceramic palette. It's so nice to mix on a surface like that because your paints spread out. See how they spread out? They don't beat up, and you can see all of your, you can see what color you actually have, really true and purely. Did I answer a question or did I go completely off topic?
I don't think there was a
Oh,
question.
I'm making up questions in my mind. Oh, wow. No, I got osmosis. I can tell what they're thinking, I think. I'm answering it before they even ask. I don't know. I do not need anybody else, apparently, to have a complete conversation. I'm redoing this wire. See, with the number 8 round, or the number 8 or number 10 larger brush, I didn't need to reload because it held enough paint. But when I'm doing it with a small brush, you do have to reload because it just doesn't hold enough to get everything done. Did you sneeze?
Yeah.
Oh, bless you.
Thanks, that was a while ago. Someone asked a question.
Okay.
I lost it though. Hold on.
I'm just tapping in some of the darks here to give me some of that texture, that rusty texture. It gives us like it looks like a surface texture when we do that.
If you paint on the back side, can color from the front side bleed through?
Oh, very unlikely. Even on your thinner watercolor sketchbooks, it's unlikely that it'll bleed through. The papers, and it's not even due to the thickness of the paper, but watercolor paper is kind of thick. It has more to do with the sizing in the paper that keeps your paint on top. That's why your watercolors are so bright. The paint isn't really absorbing in. I mean, some of the staining colors can, but most of your pigment is actually sitting on the surface because of the internal and external sizing. That external sizing is keeping your paint up above. There's also a product called lifting preparation, which is essentially like a sizing that you can paint onto the surface of your paper if you know you're going to want to do a lot of lifting and you're using colors that might stain. Very, very little of your paint actually seeps into the fibers. Mostly your really, really bright, transparent, dye-based colors like your quinacridones and your phthalos will absorb in, but because their pigment particles are so teeny tiny. And even if it does seep in, it still is very unlikely to get to the back side of that paper. I really like how this is turning out. I don't think I want to add additional highlight to that. I think that's really nice. I do want to do more to this because I lost so much when I went in and messed around in that that background. So I'm just kind of tapping in some burnt sienna. Tap and wiggle here with some yellow ochre so I don't overdo it with one color. You need that variety to give it that weathered look. So you can get a coppery or a brass look depending on what you're going for. It's more of a brass, honestly, on my lantern, but I kind of like the coppery look myself. In your little painting world, you can do whatever you want. You can let areas get a little wet and then charge a color next to it. So if I tap in some of this yellow ochre, I can then grab some burnt sienna and just kind of paint it adjacent and let the colors mingle a little bit. And go in with some of the darker, just kind of let it get back to what we had originally, that freshness. Over mixing and over fiddling is it really kills a watercolor. I'm going to grab a little bit of the green, the greenish blue mix that we made. And also I find that as I'm working through a painting, as I get towards the end, I start using the smaller brushes, less for just the detail aspect, more so that I don't overdo something and mess it up, because you don't want to overwork it. You are better to have it 10% undone than have it 1% overdone. Adding a little bit of green in here. It can be patina, it can be a reflection from our glass. I'm going to test that back of my hand. Yep, that feels dry. I can add some more streaks of my Pthalo Blue, Pthalo Green mix.
Someone asked, do you remember if you have any particular videos that focus on working wet on wet? I cannot get to work, or maybe I overwork.
Oh yeah, most of my paintings I start wet into wet. Any sort of landscape, anything with a background. What type of artwork do you like to do? And I'll suggest a tutorial for you. Like, do you like landscapes? Do you like flowers? Do you like birds? Just let Lila know, and she can let me know, and then I will. These are just like some sharp reflections and refractions. Throw a few of those in. It just adds some interest and gives it a little bit of shininess. I'm going to take a little bit of ultramarine and burnt sienna, add it to that mix, and get a real blacky. Actually, yeah, we'll do that. I was going to say I'll use the rose red, but since I haven't used that anywhere, I'm not going to add it into the painting here at the 11th hour. That's just going to be discordant if I do that. So instead I'm going to do my burnt sienna, which actually is a type of red, and make it nice and dark color that way. Add a little ultramarine. One of my favorite wet into wet tutorials is one where I wet the back of the paper, that technique I mentioned earlier, and it's of a bridge in the spring, and there's like these cherry blossoms, and there's this bridge. I think it's probably called Cityscape I think it's called Cityscape and Cherry Blossoms. It was probably about 2 years ago. It was such a fun technique. It turned out so well. And that's really wet and wet because you get the background, the back of the paper's wet and the whole paper, front of the paper's wet.
The person who was talking about the wet on wet said that they were trying to do it for round Christmas balls or balloons.
That might not be the best technique. Wet and wet might not be the best technique for that because you need so many sharp, crisp edges. I do have a tutorial on painting like shiny mylar balloons in watercolor. I did it this year. I did 2020 balloons. I've done it in marker too, but I do have a watercolor tutorial. Just scroll back on my channel a couple months, or back to January, and you'll see that tutorial there. I think that would help you probably more. It sounds like maybe you're using a technique that doesn't really work as well.
Someone asked, at what point does a color go from an accent color to a discordant?
Well, gosh, it's kind of like one of those, you know it when you see it. I would say like an accent color, I think you need to integrate it. I wouldn't just want like to mix rose red with my green mix here and make a shadow with it without using that red in the rust color and in other parts. And then I could even have I could have a button sitting on the table next to this little perfume bottle, and it could be that same color, and that would be an accent, and that would be harmonious because I've used it elsewhere. If I just painted a button here in that color and didn't do anything else with that, that would be discordant. It would be like, why is that there? That doesn't make sense. I would say if you don't have a reason to put that color there, then it's probably discordant, or it's probably going to be discordant. If you planned it out and you're using the accent color and you're using it in some mixes elsewhere, then it won't be discordant. You just got to figure out a way to integrate it. It's kind of like if you bought an orange chair for your living room and your living room is all blue. Orange and blue are complementary colors. They add an energy and they're very vibrant, but that's going to look weird. So you would want to have maybe some Chinese lantern flowers in a vase, or something else. Maybe a curtain that's that same color, something to make it work and be cohesive. So I would say an accent color that has no other relationship to everything in the picture will look discordant. So find a way to mix it in and add it somewhere. I'm just going to brighten up my highlights a little bit.
Question, would
Yes.
you ever do a full watercolor portrait walkthrough? I'd love to see you tackle it.
Oh, yeah, I think I have, actually. Oh, have I done any real-time ones? I know I've done some watercolor portraits. I would just search portrait. It would be a longer one, probably a live stream. I know I did one a few years ago. I'm pretty sure I have a lotion tissue here, so I'm not using it too much. Yeah, I know I have a few, so I would look. There might be some time lapses, and if I haven't done anything, maybe I'll do another one.
Question, does adding sizing to your paper help the paint not lift up? I used to have my paint lift a lot, but then I added a coat of gelatin. The paint kind of stains a bit more. Is this normal?
No, that's not normal. That's like the opposite of what I would expect would happen. I would expect if you put a layer of gelatin down, it would create a barrier, and it would make the paint less likely to sink into your paper and more likely to lift. So that's really strange that that's the situation. Although with that layer of gelatin, your paint would be brighter because it'd be not seeping, it'd be sitting on the surface more, and it would have probably a little bit of more gloss to it, so it probably looks brighter, and maybe you don't have to add as much. So maybe that's why it looks. Maybe that's why it looks a little bit. Maybe that's why it's not lifting, because you don't need to add as much paint to make it look good. I don't know. That's very strange. That's the opposite of what I would expect. That's the opposite of what a lifting preparation would typically do. I feel like the shadow should be a little bit darker with how much weight I have here. And I'm just going to go in and add a little bit of shadow. I'm doing it wet on dry, and then I'm going to soften it. I'm going to soften it with my...
Cheryl asks, why am I so scared to paint? It's only paint and paper, and I have the products.
I think it's intimidating. I think we're afraid sometimes of wasting or making a mess or
Not liking it.
not liking it. We're afraid we can't do it. I think this, maybe you have some memories of being a child and being in art class and having a teacher ridicule you for not doing something right, or you've got something like that deep seated that you're not even thinking about, that you've completely forgotten about, but that's under the surface somewhere, making you kind of freeze up when you sit down to be creative. And also, if you don't create that often, you're out of practice. It's kind of like getting behind the wheel if you haven't driven in a while, or um, you know playing a sport that you haven't played in a while. You're going to be a little out of practice, and it can make you feel a little bit intimidated. So the best cure for that is just to sit down and make a mess. Get a sketchbook that you're not like, that you don't have to feel like you have to put on display or show anybody. Just know that you don't have to show anybody your work if you don't want to. It's completely your choice whether anybody sees your work, and have fun with it. Nobody's judging you. You could honestly just kind of like splash some paint on your paper just to get rid of that white, and then start drawing and painting on top of that, so you don't feel intimidated. Or I know I feel the most free in a painting when I've messed it up and I'm like, well, this can't get any worse, so I'll just keep on painting until it gets better. Anything like that, any sort of those tricks, creativity tricks that can help push you past that point of being afraid to mess up, or just having a hard time starting. The worst part is the first 5 minutes of a painting. Just get in there and do something. Maybe when you're not feeling like painting but you want to do something, go onto a website like Unsplash. It's free. There's lots of reference photos you can use. Make a collection of things you'd like to paint someday, and then when you've got half an hour, some time to work, then sit down and open one up and start going. And it's better that you don't have all day. You should just have like an hour or an hour and a half to work, because then you'll get right down to business. You're not gonna, fart around trying to decide what to do. You won't have the time to mess around and think about it. You'll just jump in there and do it. So those would be my tips. I hope that helps a little bit. I think I'll throw some white highlights on here with gouache just so you can see what that look would be. I think it looks fine the way it is, but I want you to kind of see what that would look like. I'm just going to use a small round. I've just got a little bit of gouache in here. Actually, the Chinese white that's in the Turner set is opaque enough for you to use. You don't need to have separate gouache if you have that set. And I'm just going to go ahead and just throw a little bit into the highlight areas. I can even mix this down if it's too bright. I can add it with a little bit of yellow ochre. It just kind of makes it almost like a buff titanium color. It just kind of softens it, warms it up. Gives it that frosty vintage look.
So I'm going to ask, what do I do if I mess up midway and the paint dries?
You can re-wet it and keep going. You can keep on going. Don't worry about hard edges. And then when you're done, go in where the two edges meet with a damp scrubber brush. Just gently scrub, and that will merge those two colors together. The worst thing you can do is panic and then overdo. You're better just to kind of relax. Be like, okay, I can come back and work on that a little bit later. If you need any more highlights on the lantern itself, you can use a pen, or you could use some gouache, completely up to you. I usually go for a Posca pen since I started using them, because I just find that they do a much better job of a nice bright opaque white. They're also, I can refill them with like white ink or thin down white paint, and you can't do that with a gel pen. I just find them to be a little bit less fussy and finicky, and because it's a white acrylic paint, I feel like it would be more archival than whatever the heck is in a gel pen for ink.
Another question.
Yes.
Have you tried the, I don't know how to say that, but Hong paper? That Medine.
Bohong. I know what they're talking about. I'm not sure I'm pronouncing it right either. Now here I made a mistake. I'm just going to thin that out with a little bit of gouache. No, I haven't. I've only seen it sold on like either Wish or AliExpress, like when I've seen other people review it, and I'm not comfortable shopping at that on that website. Amazon. Oh, it's on Amazon? Oh, maybe I'll check it out. I've heard some good things about it. I'm thinking, gosh, I thought I just saw somebody review it. Maybe it was Parka Blogs. He's got a YouTube channel. I think it's Tio gosh, I don't know how to spell his last name, and I certainly don't know how to pronounce it. But if you search Parka Blogs, I think his YouTube and his blog will come up. He's from Singapore, I believe, and he's used that paper before. I'm pretty sure it was him. I've heard it's pretty good. I haven't used it. Thinking maybe even Natto Soup might have a review on that. But I will, if it's on Amazon, I'll check it out. If it's 100% cotton, it's probably pretty decent. I mean, that's, but then again, it could be made with short fiber cotton as opposed to long fiber cotton, and those, the shorter fibers could tend to pill. There's so many papers. Arches has been crazy expensive lately, so I can understand people trying to find a better alternative that's a little bit cheaper. I also want to just give a little sliver of highlight on the edge of that. I'm going to do it with a little bit of yellow ochre though, because the white's just too cold. That's a lot of times with your white gouaches. It just looks a little cold, especially next to a natural white paper. I like the natural white watercolor papers as opposed to a bright white. And it's personal preference. One's not better than the other. They do somehow lighten the, I don't know if they bleach it or what, it's still acid free. But I prefer a natural white. I just like the look of it. I think it's a little bit more, I don't know, it's a little more pleasant, I think.
Jenny said, I can never ever express to anyone how much I've learned from Lindsay over just a few years. She's such a generous teacher.
Well, that's so sweet. Thank you so much. And thank you guys for sticking with me with this live stream of dubious quality. All right, I'm going to call this done. Do we have any more questions before we wrap it up today?
I don't believe so.
All right. Well, thanks so much, guys. This replay will be available. I might see if I can go in and trim off the beginning, but then again, I did that once and then it wrecked the quality for the rest of the stream. I'll probably just leave it as is and put a notation in the description of when it clears up. Thank you guys so much for watching and sticking around. And I know I'll see I am seeing some of your faces in the new watercolor glass class because I do recognize some of your names. So thanks for enrolling. If you do enroll, don't forget about the 50% off discount. I want my tried and true fans to get the best price. So that's why I always launch it at the best price it will ever be, because I always feel bad when I buy something and then I see it go on sale a month later. I want to make sure my my favorite peeps get the best deal. So do use that coupon code or just click one of the links on my blog or in the video description. I put the coupon into that. But I know sometimes when people use different devices, sometimes the it shows up as the regular price. So I just want to make sure that you get the deal. The regular price is $79. The coupon code will bring it down to $39.50. So there's lots of great content in there. I wanted to make sure, I can show you guys the paintings. I wanted to make sure that it was going to have all the content with none of the filler. I wanted to make it as...
I like that one a lot.
Oh yeah, that's one of my favorites. This is the clear glass demo. I wanted to make sure that it had as many options for painting glass as possible without being redundant or overwhelming. This was Lila's favorite. Is that all on screen? I can't tell them.
It's not showing up yet.
Oh, okay. This was Lila's favorite. I really love this. This one was the building up colors. It's the last lesson in the course. It's a little more advanced. There's no white used, there's no masking fluid used, but you build up, and I show you a very simple process for that, so you hopefully don't get overwhelmed when you're doing it. This one was, I think this is a really good one for getting a good handle on all these different types of colors that you could come across, because once you get a basic understanding of the different colors and clear, you're going to be able to say, okay, I've got this bright purple bottle, this is how I'm going to do it, or I've got this olive green bottle, this is how I'm going to do it, because you see the density of colors demonstrated, you see the more clear, lighter colors demonstrated, you see pressed versus cut versus faceted between all these different lessons, and then also showing you how to take a few different reference images and textures of glass. Like we've got sea glass here, we've got a shiny bottle, we've got a landscape, kind of showing you how to incorporate different things together so that you can create what you want to create and you don't have to rely heavily on other people's reference materials. So those are the finished products. We have lessons on basic techniques as well. And I feel like it gives you everything you need to know without a bunch of extra. And I also put an archive of other glass tutorials that I have on YouTube organized by what they are, so you can easily find other things to paint if you want to. And obviously you can enjoy any of my free YouTube videos, whether you're in the class or not. Just do a search. But the glass class, I feel like I really broke down painting glass into bite-sized chunks, easy to digest, and without being overwhelming. At least that's my goal. And if you're in the class, let me know what you think. I love feedback because I want to make my classes as useful as they can be.
One last question.
Yes.
Have you tried the Leather Village journals?
No, I haven't. I shy away from buying things with animal products. Sometimes you buy something and it ends up having something with like a leather or a fur in it, but I do try to avoid those, just personal preference. But if it's a great paper, you can recommend it in the chat and help other people that are interested in that. Any others?
No.
Okay, well, thank you guys so much for sticking around through the bumpy beginnings. I feel like that's the how my live streams usually go. And I will see you in the class if you're signed up. If not, I'll see you around YouTube or the other social medias. Thank you so much. If you have questions after this live stream, pop them in the comments section and I will answer them there. Thanks so much for watching. Until next time, happy crafting. Bye.